and I'm sure that our speakers are as well. So I'm going to turn this over to Peter Quinby, and instead of fumbling over your introduction, I'll just let you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, what your organization does, what your roles and responsibilities are, how you got into it, anything that you think would be useful to a job seeker. Oh, sorry, one other thing, one logistical thing before I say, if you do have a Q&A, please, there's two boxes at the bottom. There's a Q&A box and there's a chat box. Please put it into the Q&A box. We'll send out a couple of reminders about that. It just helps us with organizing the answers. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Quinby. Sorry, Peter.
That's okay. No, Aaron did send out a list of questions that he said could guide this discussion, so I am gonna kind of stick to that. His first one was just to give a career overview. I am currently the chief scientist and the chairperson for Ancient Forest Exploration and Research. It's a small nonprofit organization that focuses on identifying, characterizing, and working towards the protection of old growth and ancient forest landscapes in Ontario. We do address old growth forests that are nearby in other provinces and occasionally in the Northeast US, but we're pretty much restricted to Ontario. I think AFER, we use the term AFER for short, the short form of ancient forest exploration and research. And I think that it's a model that can be applied elsewhere. But the thing is that it kind of relies on having someone that doesn't need like a full-time salary. Unfortunately, as most people that have gotten into the nonprofit world realize, is that money's tight, it's hard to get, and from 1 month to the next, sometimes you don't even know what kind of budget you're working with. But I started ancient forest exploration and research back in 1992 as incorporated, but I graduated with my PhD in 1988, and it took 4 years for me to get to the point where I knew enough about how a nonprofit, a small ENGO works, and I had the connections, like knowing lawyers and other scientists and accountants, so that I could put together a board of directors to make it happen. So it was a 4-year process. During the 4 years after I graduated, I was able to team up with other NGOs that were doing research on old growth forests, and so I was able to do my work, but it was as a project of another group, and I found that somewhat frustrating because they're going to take a percentage of the funding that you get. They are going to want to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and they will sometimes want to get involved in making decisions. So it was nice in 1992 when we were able to get incorporated. I didn't have to listen to, not that I don't have, people giving me advice, but advice from scientists is much better than advice from others, usually. And then there was no percentage taken as a like overhead or whatever. So that 100% of the funds could go towards the research. I've been operating ancient forests for 33 years now, and it just to give you a rough idea, I mean, it's been up and down. Like I've had years where our budget was over 200 grand, and I've had years when it was like $30, right? The times when the budget was high was basically when we first started doing the work, and the public seemed to be much more interested then than they are now in terms of supporting work that could lead to immediate or at least near-term protection of landscapes that are unique and special. Old growth forests are very rare, and they're very important. They're becoming more and more important all the time as we face this climate crisis. we have because they sequester a lot of carbon and they store a lot of carbon, but they're huge in terms of biodiversity reservoirs, places where lots of species are found. And they're great natural laboratories to study forest ecology and how nature works. But as I said, I've never really been able to generate enough money through fundraising for this small nonprofit that has maybe on average about a $40,000 to $50,000 budget every year. Because when if you want to hire people to collect data in the summertime and you want to have, a technician or an associate that helps you with your work during the winter, you need to spend money, and there never was really enough for me to make a living. So I have my career, I'm actually retired now. I work 100% for AFER. I've never had a salary, but to pay the bills, I've been a professor at a bunch of places. I've had a number of consulting contracts, and I did sort of finish my career up in Ontario, um, working for about 7 years for a company that does mostly hydroelectric development and mining development, but also obviously had a need in order to get those projects approved, had a need for environmental assessment. So I got involved in doing um, uh, uh, basically 7 years of environmental assessment, looking at species at risk and other valued ecosystem components, as they call them, like caribou and wolverine and various bird species and etc. So basically, uh, to pay my own bills and to make a living, I spent 10 years working at the University of Pittsburgh. I was the director of the Climate Tuning Laboratory of Ecology. And I think Aaron came in to that institution, I think a couple months after I left. And when I did leave that job, it was to come up to Ontario, where I am now, actually very close to Algonquin Park. For those of you who might know where Algonquin Park is, about 3 hours north of Toronto. And I also worked at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, Ontario, and then I had contracts at other universities near Toronto. And so one of the things Aaron did ask us to talk a bit about is, how do you deal with the transition from going from university to actually getting a job that's full-time permanent? And it took me a little longer. It took me about 4 years to incorporate AFER. It took me about 6 years to go from my PhD to a tenure stream position. And during those 6 years, basically I had 1 year, 2 year, 1 year and 2 year contracts teaching at local universities. I did start teaching as a PhD student, and taught a fair number of courses. So when it came time to apply for academic jobs, I kind of had a leg up because I had already designed and taught 2 or 3 university level courses. But anyway, eventually I
Can I
did get
interrupt you
time.
just for a second? I want to ask
Sure.
a question
Yeah.
here. So, when you worked at universities, you had the opportunity at the universities to do the research that AFER does through the universities, and you acknowledge that you didn't want to do that. You still, from my recollection, because I did come through the University of Pittsburgh and Pymatuning, you still were involved with substantial amounts of research at the institutions where you were
Yeah.
at. So why did you choose to separate those inherently?
Well, basically, I knew that the core of my research and my research interests would be old growth forest ecology. And to be totally honest, I was always working towards getting back up to Central Ontario to continue with the work that I'd started. But it didn't mean that I didn't get involved in opportunities, to do research where I was. And so, for example, at Climate Tuning Lab, there were some projects that I did get involved in. And they were fun. But you have to be careful that you don't become overcommitted. Um, so I didn't get into any large long-term projects at other places. And the nice thing about running AFER as a nonprofit organization was that the work that I did, the research I did with AFER could be used as professional development for where the universities that, at the universities that I did work at.
What were the
Because it was
legal, so sorry, what was the legal connectivity between AFER and the universities that you worked at?
there really was no legal aspect concerned to it because AFER is incorporated in Ontario, Canada, and where I worked was in the States, although I did work at Wilfrid Laurier University for about 3 years. Um, yeah, there never seemed to be any problem with that. I was able to get research grants from the institutions where I was working, and I was able to apply them to the field work I was doing in Central Ontario. So it really kind of boiled down to um, running a small nonprofit opened up a lot more opportunities to get funding. You can use GoFundMe. You can reach out to individual people. You can design. You don't have to run your proposals and your ideas through the department and the division and you know the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot less red tape. And the institutions, the larger institutions where I did have a salary and where I worked, they were fine with it because it just meant, another more support from a different source that helped me to achieve, my goals in terms of my research. So I guess I was fortunate. I never had any kind of legal problems.
So
Yeah.
I like this because in my mind, it's like you had an end goal in mind and you threw a rope to that end goal, connected it to a rock, and you were constantly kind of tethered to that end goal throughout all of your life's activities, and you ended up where you wanted to be because of that.
Well, you're right. And I was lucky to be able to retire at age 59. My wife helped out with that. She said, "Oh, I want to keep working." I said, "Well, I'm not going to stop you from doing that." So it helped. It really helped that, she continued to work and that living in Ontario, you don't need to worry about healthcare or paying for healthcare. So it was possible for me to retire at 59. When I did that, I continued with some short-term professional contracts outside of AFER, but then I was able to jump into AFER full time. And, since 2014, when I retired, I have been working almost full time without pay on ancient forest exploration and research. And it's my passion. It helped me in the transition of the retirement. A lot of people, I've done some reading, I've talked to some people that have had a bit of a rough transition into retirement because their identity, their activities, all these things are associated with what they've been doing for the last 20 to 40 years. But luckily for me, I was able to just do a smooth transition into just getting more involved in identifying where the old growth is, going out and surveying that old growth forest, writing reports, getting some papers published. I've co-authored a book that's out, got its second edition a couple years ago called Ontario's Old Growth Forests. I'm working on another book now. So it has been a nice way to supplement and provide funding for my research, but also sort of a nice jumping off point for retirement. And so I see myself continuing to do it until I'm just unable to, to function anymore, pretty much.
So, in years where made, in years when you had, like you said, $30 for AFER, um,
Yeah.
what was your feeling then? I mean, did you just keep on going through with it because you believed in it?
Well, it worked out really well because that's when the book was being written, and I think it's got almost around 260 pages or something, and it's got there's a lot of information in this book, and so I was able to work, after hours while I was a consultant, working full time as a consultant. I was able to put in extra hours writing the book.
Okay.
So that kind of worked out really nicely. So it was really during the years when I was working for the engineering company as an ecologist that the budget was just barely above water. And I didn't feel because we had industrial clients and I was having to deal with government agencies a lot to get permits. I just didn't really feel like I didn't wanted AFER to have too much visibility, really. I didn't want some people think that, you're you're not really doing good science if you have a passion for it, somehow that creeps into the objectivity of it, which is ridiculous because as long as you collect your data in an objective scientific way, you're fine. Right? Just because you like something doesn't mean you can't study it because you're going to be unobjective about it. You can be objective, you can do science, and you can learn about things that you're passionate about without tainting the results because of what some people might call a subjective approach or a subjective uh, concern for it.
I'm so
Um,
glad that you're here to say this in a public forum because it is often assumed that in order to publish science, you need to be a faculty at a university or some other research institution that receives grant money. But to that point, it would I would assume I don't know Canadian law very well, but I would assume that you're not eligible to receive federal funding, at least in the United States, you wouldn't be as a well, I guess as a nonprofit. So I mean, how would that work?
well, that's a good point. I have received funding from the US, but not from governments. And there's a foundation called the Tides Foundation. So like if I let's say I get money from, I don't know, there's a MacArthur Foundation down there, right? There's a bunch of big, huge foundations down there, and I've gotten money from some small ones. But but basically what happens is you connect through Tides. And so the American money goes to Tides America, and then at Tides America sends it to Tides US or Canada, and then Tides Canada gives it to the Canadian organization.
Okay.
But I have US and Canadian citizenship, so that makes it a little smoother, right? I can work in both places legally with
Okay.
ease. Yeah.
Would you say it's easier to start up a nonprofit in Canada or US, or does it depend on a lot of factors?
That's a good question because I haven't been involved in nonprofit work down in the US, but I don't think it would be. I mean, basically, it's kind of crazy. I mean, if you just do the minimum you need to do to run a nonprofit organization up here, and I would think it'd be pretty similar down there. Down there, it's what, a 501(c)(3) or something like that. Is that what it's called? So, so basically, you just need to have one meeting a year. You need to have at least three people on your board of directors. You need to keep minutes for every meeting. You need to have a financial statement. And you need to submit your tax return based on that financial statement, to Canada Revenue Service every year. So I would think that they'd be similar down there. You might need to meet more often. You might need more board members, whatever. But you know what? It's not that tough. I mean, it's not, I mean, doing the administrative work for it and doing the management isn't fun, right? It's not like, oh, I get to write up the minutes today, right? Yippee. It's not like, analyzing data and saying, holy, I found what I thought I might find. But it's like, oh God, I gotta prepare for the meeting next week, right? It's drudgery, but you gotta do it. And it's not that much. Like when you look at how much work it's like loading the dishwasher, it's like, oh shit, I gotta load the dishwasher. Well, it takes 5 minutes, right? In your head, it's like 20 minutes, but same with managing like a small nonprofit, it's really a lot less work than what you kind of build it up to be in your mind, right?
Did you have a mentor in the process? And related to that, for anybody that's thinking about starting up an NGO, you've given a lot of great advice, but are there is there anything that you can recommend to somebody who's maybe a college student now or a graduate student to prepare for that?
Well, you know what? Basically, I just got to know the people in the small to medium size. Well, actually, I got to know everybody in the NGO community that was doing environmental work in Ontario because you know, I was actually hired by a small NGO to do original research up in Temagami on old growth forest up there. And through that work, I got to know the people, a whole bunch of other people. And in fact, one of the guys that Bob Ray, who became elected as a premier of Ontario, got arrested, basically blockading one of the logging roads into the stand that I was studying.
Mm.
And he became premier 6 months after he was arrested, right? Like I was lucky because I was able to make connections with the groups and the people there. And so in the process of doing that, and that's my advice would be wherever you think you want to, create that NGO, get to know the people that are doing the kind of work that's either similar to what you're doing, or same as like that's what you're doing, because then you could partner with them. But the closer you can get to those people who are running those, and obviously if you offer to help them pro bono, they're probably going to say yes. That's the best way to learn is to become involved with the local groups. And then by integrating that way, and asking questions and participating in things, you just learn. It's a hands-on learning experience. And so I had 4 years of that. And so I met a lot of people that were very supportive of what I did, and including lawyers that basically put it all together.
So I like asking this question, and I think that you're going to have one of the best answers of anybody I've had on this webinar because you're such a passionate individual. You started this NGO. Looking back on all that you've published, all that people that you've worked with, what would you say is your the proudest contribution or the proudest moment that you've had in your career? And it doesn't have to be just
Probably,
an AFER, by the way. It could be anything.
yeah, I probably the fact that my research has been the foundation for getting two logging moratoriums. And one of them was to stop logging the world's largest old growth white pine forest, located at Lake Obabica in Temagami, Ontario. And the other one is Canada's largest old growth eastern hemlock forest, located at Catchacoma Lake, 50 kilometers north of Peterborough. No logging has taken place there since 2021 when we were able to get a logging moratorium. And part of that effort has involved well, I've been involved in creating forest standards for old growth forests. In other words, how many snags, how many logs per hectare, how many large old trees, how old should the tree be, what's the density, minimum, like the work that was done out in the Pacific Northwest by Jerry Franklin et al., right? Like they did the original first old growth work out in the Pacific Northwest through the U.S. Forest Service. And if you follow their work, they've identified components of the old growth forest that should be quantified and could be used for developing minimum standards, right? So I have to say that, plus the book, the Ontario Old Growth Forest book is really, I think, one of my proudest. But I also feel really good about helping students. I mean, I was a professor for 20 years, and I did what I could to help students any way I could, and including, helping them transition into careers. And so that's a very satisfying kind of feeling as well.
So before we go to a quick break for Sandra to give us some announcements, I just want to end on some practical advice for anybody who's thinking about following in a similar path, and just get your reflections on it. I've worked with several people who have started their own NGOs or who work for NGOs, and I can attest that they have had the most circuitous and
Hmm.
non-direct career path of anyone that I've met. They've been willing to kind of jump at a moment's notice to go abroad somewhere to do some work. They've learned several languages. They've gone abroad. They've started working with other NGOs. They've developed their own NGOs. And my sense is always kind of a wonder at them, because I think a lot of us are taught that we get a job, we get paid, and we go home at the end of the day. And you're like the farthest thing from that. I mean, we all have things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis that involve work and involve our own personal life. But I think that as far as like that work-life balance, you probably have the farthest thing from our common mentality that we have when we're growing up, of just like you work, you go home, then you retire. Your reflections on that. Go ahead.
Well, there's two people that kind of come to mind that I think sort of sparked um, a sort of independent, adventurous kind of approach to a career. And the first one was my high school physics teacher. He said, a lot of you, you're all going to go out, you're gonna have your lives, you're gonna get your jobs and all that, but a few of you are going to, create new things. You're going to create things that don't exist right now. And that always kind of stuck with me. And I thought, whoa, I don't know why, but it just that thought, that concept appealed to me. And it always kind of, had a little place in my brain. And then this is going to sound hokey and corny, but my mother, she always drilled into my head, and it's BS to some extent, but she always said, you can do anything you want to do, right? So, like, we all know that that's kind of like meant to just give you some, give you uplift a kid, right? But that also always kind of had a home in my brain as well. And then I got to thinking that like I really wasn't sure I could do a PhD, but I knew that if I did, the possibilities of what I could do later would be, you know, bigger than what they would be otherwise. And so I always had the support from my family to do it, and I don't like to fail, but we all fail, right? And I guess there's a part of me that when I when I'm pursuing things that I really want, I don't really think too much about failure. I just kind of figure, because when you think about it, you can think of it as failure, or you can think of it as, oh, well, what did I learn? Like, I learned something. I may have taken a baby step, but it was a step, right? It might have been a giant step. It could have been a slingshot, it could have been, and sometimes it is, right? Sometimes, you jump over the canyon, or you're able to achieve something you didn't think you could do, but if you don't try, you're never going to do it. So um, I, I
Well,
I
thank you
guess that
very
that
much
would
for
be my
that candid advice. I'm just smiling as I'm thinking to myself, oh, yeah. I think my mother told my brother, "You can do anything," and she looked at me and she's like, "You can do some things. It's okay."
thought.
Uh, no, parents are lovely. Um, Thank you very much, Peter. There's a couple Q&As in the Q&A box. You can click on them and you can answer them live. I'm going to hand this over to Sandra for a brief just announcement of some things, and then we'll turn it over to Clarisse.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, Clarisse, and Peter. Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Del Rio, Professional Programs Coordinator at the Ecological Society of America. Thanks for joining us today for the 6th session of Exploring Ecology Career Opportunities in Ecology, a webinar series. We're pleased to announce that the upcoming session dates are March 4th, April 15, May 13 and June 10. Those are all from 2 to 3 Eastern time. You can register for them in ESA's webinars webpage, and I'll be sharing the links right now in the chat. I also want to share some of the upcoming professional development opportunities that we have at ESA that you can register for. This week, we have Mastering Abstract Submissions, Effective Tips and Strategies. We also have a Communication with Congress event on February 10th. We have a workshop on large landscape restoration in principle and practice, and that's on February 18th, and a webinar on the biodiversity credit market on February 27th. Additionally, I'd like to mention ESA's Professional Ecologist Certification Program. For those who might not know, ESA does have a certification program. It's been around for over 40 years, and you do not have to be an ESA member to get certified. You can learn more about this program at esa.org/certification or email us at cert@esa.org with any questions. Lastly, some important ESA announcements. The call for contributed abstract submissions is now open for the ESA 2025 annual meeting. It will happen in August 10th through the 15th in Baltimore, Maryland. Submit your oral or poster presentation abstract on any ecology-related topic by February 27th. Also, the Mid-Atlantic chapter of the Ecological Society of America will hold its annual meeting from April 4th through the 6th of 2025 at Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania. Abstract submissions and registration are both open. Again, I shared the links in the chat. So now with that, back to you, Aaron. Thanks for your attention, everyone.
Thank you,
Aaron, I have a
Sandra.
quick question. How do I answer these questions? I'm trying to type, but I'm not sure how to do it.
You can try now, Peter. I just made you co-host. Let's see if that.
I'm clicking on it, but
Oh, you click that you want to answer this question live. So you should be able to also click a blue button that says type answer, and you can actually type the answer.
okay, I lost it on the first one.
We're gonna move on to Clarisse while you guys
Okay.
figure this out over the private chat here. So thank you very much, Sandra, for all those announcements. Just a quick pitch. I am the senior chair for the ESA's public and private ecologists section, and we do have a mixer there where we can chat and you can get to meet potential employers or just talk about job opportunities. It's a great time. These conferences are really fun, especially for newbies who have never been to them before. They're very approachable. Clarisse, thank you so much for coming on. Let me pin you. Pin, there we go. Oh, we're gonna just pin for everybody. Spotlight for everybody. Continue. There we go. So without further ado, please go ahead, introduce yourself, your organization, which is a very amazing organization, by the way, and tell us a little bit about what you do, how you got there.
Oh, I'm Clarisse, and I use she or any pronouns, and I have been here at Harvard Forest for almost 18 years, and my journey started as a kid, I guess. I was raised by immigrants, and I think it was my job to become the person that the world had told them no lots of times about being. So I was, I think they were like, you can be a ditch digger, but you better be the best ditch digger. So like just this sort of hard work ethic was what propelled me. I wasn't necessarily going to go into science, but when I became an undergrad at Mount Holyoke, which, by the way, if you know any young women or gender diverse people who want to go to undergrad and they want to be strong people, send them to Mount Holyoke. So I had an advisor my first year who saw that I had been working full time since I was 15. Even when I was in high school, I was working full time. He saw that I was still working in the mall, and he was like, I think you're somebody who could work in my ecology lab. And I was like, you're what? Like, I don't know what that is. And so he really just opened the door for me. And so this is like, I am like living proof of diversity and inclusion and why it matters, because there's no way that I would have gone into STEM. And I feel like I've done incredible things since then. So yeah, throughout undergrad, I worked in his lab, and I went to conferences, and I became kind of an owner of like my place in STEM. I learned to identify spiders, which is a weird niche thing, but it turns out there aren't that many people who do it. But what I really wanted to be was a marine biologist. I'd grown up in a landlocked state in Tennessee, and I went to college in Massachusetts. And so I was like, I'm going to get an internship, which I was able to get because of my spider research, to go study whales, because they knew that I could sit at a microscope for a really long time. And I was like, yes, see, so get those transferable skills. You never know where sitting in a microscope for hours can get you. So it turns out I get seasick though. So I did the whale research thing for years, and that was great, but like I didn't want a life of seasickness. So I had this moment where I was with a dead humpback whale that had washed up on the beach, and I was like measuring her jaw, and it was like a sad moment for me because I remembered like when she was born, like 4 years prior. And this journalist is asking me questions like while I'm doing this, and she's asking kind of these weird questions that show that like she didn't even know what kind of whale it was. And I'm not casting aspersions on her. It's fine. She didn't need to know. You don't know what you don't know. But in that moment, I was like, we are never going to solve like these global change issues if like we aren't asking the right questions and telling the right stories. So in that moment, I decided that I was going to leave and stop being seasick, and I was going to go to Boston, and I was going to get a master's degree in science communication. And I was going to do it while working full time because that would make tuition free. So I applied for jobs at a bunch of colleges in the Boston area that had these kinds of master's programs and gave free tuition. And I became basically a department admin, like a secretary. And I did that for 4 years, and I got my master's. And I was also like, because I said yes to all these opportunities, kind of hugely influential kind of in the higher ed space while I was there. Because if you follow Shirley Chisholm's advice, which is like, if no one gives you a seat at the table, pull up a folding chair, that's real. Like, pull up your folding chair. And if you've got something to say, like, you have to be kind and like respectful, but you'll get places. So yeah, I got my master's, and then right at the end of that master's, my undergrad advisor, who had since moved to Harvard Forest, which is where I am now, he and I had stayed in touch. So here's another piece of advice: stay in touch with your undergrad advisor. He wrote to me and said, I'm looking for a spider research tech. Do you know anybody? And I was like, Aaron, I know what you're doing right now. Aaron Ellison is his name. And I was like, I've moved on, man. I'm doing other things. And he was like, okay, well, it's a good job. So I applied, I got it. It actually is really good that I got it, because a couple of years into that, I ended up getting diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is this horrible like autoimmune disease that really kind of impacts your whole life. And so my idea of my life as a field tech completely changed in that moment. And I had this advisor who had known me for 10 years and really kind of worked me through that transition. I don't actually know how I would have handled it, because I almost died. Like, it was terrible. And what ended up happening was they created, not for me, but they just created this other position at Harvard Forest that was director of education and outreach. It was a new position. So I applied, not assuming that I would get it, not by a stretch, not by a mile. And I did end up getting it. And my boss, when he hired me, was like, there are a lot of qualified people for this, but we're taking a risk on you. And I was like, oh, great. Cool. But it's good that he did. So I appreciate people taking risks on me. So probably the biggest challenge that I faced during all my transitions was just confidence. And having advisors who have your back like really helps with that confidence piece. Because if Aaron Ellison, who's like, big deal in ecology, says that I can do it, then I think I can do it. And then eventually, while working full time, I've been working on a PhD, which I stopped during COVID, and now I've restarted again. I also had a baby. She's very healthy. She's 7. I feel like she's old enough now for me to finish that PhD. So yeah, I'm continuing on in my very interesting job. I'm happy to tell you what a typical day is like, or happy to, Aaron, you guide me here. What would you like to hear?
So that is a wonderful overview. First of all, congratulations on the baby. I'm not sure if that was yesterday or
Oh no, she's 7. It's been a while.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
well, then congratulations on the baby's on 7th birthday then. And that was truly an inspirational story. I mean, this is great. So just for everybody that is not familiar with Harvard Forest, can you just give us like a quick 1 minute overview of Harvard Forest, what it does, what its purpose is, its connection to Harvard University, and then your specific position? It's probably going to be 2 minutes.
For sure. Harvard Forest has been here since 1907, and we were founded as Harvard School of Forestry, but now we are more of an ecological research center. There are about 1,000 Harvard students who come through each year, but there are many more thousands of students from other universities and K-12 who come through here to learn about climate, ecology more broadly, and just how to ask questions about the land, which can be really interdisciplinary and involve everything from like economics to law to psychology. So yeah, about 100 active research projects at any given time.
And your position
and my position, Director of Education and Outreach, boy, anything that deals with people is me. So if it's a public policy briefing, that's me. If it's, you know, talking to fifth graders, if it's talking to university groups, if it's talking to a group of senators, if I run a museum here, which gets thousands of visitors a year. So I run a whole, like, I have a staff, I have a bunch of volunteers who work here. I write a lot of grants. That's the short answer. I write a lot of grants.
So I know that the question on half of our audience's head is, wait, she doesn't have a PhD and she's working at Harvard University? That's crazy. So you're going to need to elaborate on this for us. You're going to need to tell us, like, what's your opinion of getting a PhD now for students who are just exiting undergraduate? Is it valuable? Do you pursue your dreams faster than you pursue a PhD, or vice versa? What would you say?
Honestly, my decision point has been what is okay for me in my like risk aversion and financial stability. So for me, it was never going to be an option, and I hope it's an option for many of you, to go and be a PhD student just financially. I had to send money home. Like it was just never going to be enough money for me. So for me, having a full-time job, having the 403B, which is like a 401k, just kind of having that stability has been like thing number one. Thing number two is like, what do you actually want to do? So like for me, I think helping people to understand science is what I actually want to do. So does a PhD actually help me do that better? Or can I position myself in a place where people see what I'm doing, respect what I'm doing, are willing to give me PI status, which was a big deal for Harvard to give me that so that I can write my own grants, federal and otherwise, to do that. Yeah, so figure out what it is you want to do. If you want to help people, like come to my side. If you really want to, you know, become a professor or really advance a particular niche of STEM, like go get it. Go get that PhD. For me, it just wasn't the right answer. And one thing that Aaron Ellison did for me when I was an undergrad was he saw me. He saw sort of the cultural expectations for me. He saw my financial needs. And he was like, you know, you don't have to get a PhD. And I wish that more people would tell people that, because you don't have to.
If you don't mind, can we talk briefly just about these cultural expectations? Because that's not something that I get to talk about very often. But you've made it front and center, along with your disability that you overcame, and I would love to touch on that as well, if you don't mind. So I think a lot of students who are, either first generation college students or first generation Americans, are dealing with a university system that does not pander to cultural expectations very much at all, despite, I'm not going to criticize, but despite attempts to do so, I don't think that we've done it very successfully. So, like, for a student who might be struggling to associate their education with their own cultural expectations, what advice do you have?
Go to talks that are interesting to you, that seem like they might have some shared cultural values, and find your people, find your mentors, and also try to have courage, even if somebody doesn't know your particular situation, try to have courage to share it. Ecology can be a much safer space these days, I think, than it has been in the past. I've had students who've really taught me, like I work a lot with Indigenous communities now. That was not something that I ever did before. And it's because they had the grace and the courage and the vulnerability to tell me what they needed to actually make their work possible. So, yeah, just be honest about what you need and what you're working with, and push back against the idea that we're all sort of coming from a level playing field, because we're not.
I'll echo that sentiment that ecology in particular is a field that is more open, I think, to cultural integration across the board, especially at ESA. I've noticed because I've gone to a few different types of conferences now, ranging from uber professional to extremely laid back. ESA is always kind of somewhere towards the more laid back. But more importantly, there's the Black student section, there's the Hispanic student section, there's the Indigenous and traditional ecological knowledge section. I mean, they're really open to a wide variety of groups, and I don't see. I'm not parading ESA for that. I'm just saying I don't see that in too many other fields, and so I'll echo that sentiment. Um, you talk about pushing back, you talk about bringing a folding chair to the table, and frankly speaking, I think if I were an undergraduate, well, I think I was really arrogant as an undergraduate, so I wouldn't be afraid of it. But I also probably wouldn't do it responsibly and well. But for most people, I think that's kind of like terrifying. The
Totally.
thought of sitting at a table with a bunch of superior people to you, that at least that you think that they're superior. How did you have the confidence to just pull up your pants and do it?
For me, honestly, I will say it was because I was in Aaron Ellison's shadow, and he's sort of the man. Like, and he was like pushing me. He was like, go sit at that table. I was like, I don't want to. Those people don't want to talk to me. So, um, it's okay if you do it in someone's shadow for a while, but like everybody on this webinar, send me an email. I will leverage whatever like capacity I have to create that space for you, to give you like courage and encouragement of how to pull up the chair. It's scary. It's scary. It's not in my nature. I'm like sounding like an extrovert and stuff right now, but no, I'm not really a talker actually. And I had to develop the fire in me. I'm now in my mid 40s, and I'm like, yeah, I'm here. You're welcome. Like, but that was not me when I was 18, and it wasn't me when I was 30. And so, yeah.
So let's talk briefly about STEM here. For those students, career seekers, whatever we want to call you, that are seeking a career in some kind of STEM, you have a degree in spiders and communication, and not in early education, not in outreach. How do you crack into that?
Education, you like my first education job was leading whale watches. So like, you know, if you can lead groups of people and tell them about, some sort of, be a naturalist and tell them about things. So go work for Audubon, go work for somebody, even for a summer, and develop your voice about how you connect with people about STEM. The world of STEM education is very inviting and really understands work experience and like what you bring as a person much more than they care about credentials when it comes to the kinds of jobs that I have, the kinds of people that I hire. Like, I want to know how you connect to people. How do you make people feel like they belong? How do you make people feel comfortable so they can access the information? I don't care what degree you have.
Hmm. Um, is Harvard Forest hiring? Not for me. Not for me. I'm good.
I'm not supposed to get political right now, but
Oh, okay.
we are like going, like what are
Yeah,
we
yeah,
talking about?
yeah. I
Most
can
of my grants are
imagine.
federal, so there's a lot of like, I don't, yeah, it's something right now. So not now,
We're not going to get
in the
political just for
future,
my own personal sanity.
in the future, I will hire, and it will be great.
Um, so let's talk. By the way, for anybody that has questions, please do ask them in the Q&A. We're going to run up against the clock, and I will send out the questions to the speakers afterwards. They will answer them. We will send the answers back to you. I promise. Um, let's talk about that disability that you brought up, and you seem to say you were okay talking about it. Um, I'm a big fan of saying that we all have disabilities, just some of us wear it on our sleeves, some of us don't. Some of us have physical, some of us have mental, and we're all unique in that way. And it is a challenge in a very field-driven occupation to overcome that. And I had the opportunity of talking with somebody last ESA who actually said this to me, that She had a great experience. She was working at a good job, and then she developed a disability that kept her from the field. The job sidelined her, and it no longer became fun, and her disability kind of excluded her from a lot. Um, how did you overcome? I mean, it sounded like you went through some stuff. You reflected on it, but like, what's your advice for anybody who's dealing with maybe a disability that is going to keep them from what they want to do?
I would say prioritize you getting right and you getting as healthy as you can be, more than the work. The job is never going to love you back more than you can love yourself. So there are all kinds of disabilities and I won't pretend to understand them all. But for mine, things like stress, things like too much physical exertion will sort of like flare it and then I'm in the hospital. So I can't do that. And so knowing where my boundaries are is like my most important skill. It makes me a more whole person to come to work. And so I just have to be really clear. I can't like keep my superhero brain on all the time. I have to really understand and like make commitments that are appropriate for me.
Okay.
So yeah, understand your boundaries.
Okay. Um, so what's it like getting a PhD while you're working full time?
Oh, it's dope. It's so
Oh,
good.
it's not good, or it
No,
is good.
I said it's so good. It's actually lovely, because I'm doing it slowly. I'm a bunch of courses in. I don't know what it's going to be like with the dissertation piece, but I just wrote a big federal grant that would sure make it easier. So we'll see. I'm psyched about my research question. If you do it while you're working full time and it kind of aligns with your job, then it feels like just this extra focus time that you get to have, which I don't know, maybe it's sort of like AFER, like Peter at AFER. It's like it's what you do at night and it's kind of a gift almost. Um, yeah, it's not easy. I have a
Why
kid.
did
Like,
you
it's not
decide
easy
to pursue the PhD when you have this lovely job?
because you never know what's going to happen with your lovely job. Also, I
Okay.
think it does make me more competitive for grants. Like, I can PI educational research all day long, but NSF doesn't know that, So like if I have the three letters after my name, they may trust it more.
I see. And I see Peter shaking, nodding his head too in agreement. So I'll take that as a consensus there. Um, yeah. So work-life balance with a child.
Yeah, she gets disappointed a lot.
Oh no.
I know. I love her to pieces. I make commitments to her that I keep.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. And she has been coming on my back, for hikes in the woods, for groups of tours, like since she was born. So now she's
So I'm going to end with
my back.
the same question I asked Peter. Looking back on your career, I'm assuming that slicing open a gigantic whale was not your proudest moment. So what
No,
is your proudest moment, or what is your proudest moments that you can think of?
I'm proud to just be here. I think most of my family is not alive anymore, but if they were, they would be like, "Oh my God, you did it." So I'm that. I'm mostly proud that I have created support networks for a lot of emerging scientists, whether they be working in global conflict zones, whether they are Indigenous community members who deserve to have their voices heard, or whether it's seventh graders who have just sort of like blown up on their idea of what STEM even is and like whether they belong in it, even if their grades aren't great. So yeah, creating space in ecology for people.
I appreciate you saying that because I think that that's probably my also proudest moment. I mean, I love doing this for career seekers because I do think that you need to create that kind of space. So I really appreciate you saying that. It makes me feel good about myself as well.
You're killing it, Aaron. It's so good.
No. Um, so I think that just about wraps it up. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, and that's okay. If you have any questions, Sandra, can you please throw up emails? The last slide. Perfect. Oh, we got dig at one here. During a career, there's a dilemma between two strategies, becoming a specialist in a specific field or taking a broader approach. This is going to be a long question without time that we have. I'm gonna send that out to the panelists. I want to say this is such a wonderful session because we have like two extraordinarily passionate people, which I've run the full gambit, I think, with people who are just like, this is a job and I'm going to go home at the end of the day and quit. And then we have these two individuals online here who are absolutely passionate about what they do and have made a career for themselves in two very different ways. And I'm so happy to have had their voices on this. If anyone on the call or listening to it later on would like to contact either of the speakers, their emails are on here. The QR codes are either to a LinkedIn page, or I think for Peter, it's actually to the Ancient Forest website, the AFER website. I would suggest not hounding them for jobs because that's probably not something that they can address at the moment. And if they did have a job, they would just advertise it publicly. However, for advice, career goals, etc., or maybe just like interview advice, if you have any questions or interests, please do email them. Just connect with them. I think as both Peter and Clarisse noted, networking is huge. You hang on to that network and you build that network every step of the way. So I want to thank you both for this. We do have another session coming up on March. We're going to try to do this once a month for the foreseeable future. One from consulting and one from the Phipps Conservatory. Peter, I'm sure you're very familiar with that. We both were in Pittsburgh and we both love the Phipps Conservatory, or at least I do. It's where I met my wife, actually. So that's going to be next month. And we hope to have all of you and more there. If anybody would like to watch the previous webinars, the QR code is on the screen. Also, just a big call out to anybody who's listening. If you know of anybody who might want to share their career story, please send them my way. I promise I won't bite. We're always looking for people who have an interesting career or just interesting advice that they would like to give. So thank you so much, Clarisse and Peter. This was great. I really appreciate both of you coming on. And we'll be in touch with questions afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.